There is a place in the middle of the Pacific Ocean so remote, so completely cut off from the rest of the world that the closest human beings to it are not on land. They are floating 400 kilometers above it, in space. The nearest coastline is over 2,700 kilometers away in every direction. No ships pass through here. No planes fly overhead. No fish populations gather. Even the ocean current that circles this region acts like a wall, keeping nutrients out and turning the water into one of the most biologically empty zones on the entire planet. This place has a name. It is called Point Nemo. And 4 kilometers beneath its surface, in total darkness and absolute silence, lies one of the most extraordinary graveyards in human history. Not of people, of machines. The greatest spacecraft ever built, space stations, cargo ships, satellites, rockets, sent here deliberately on final one-way trajectories to die alone at the bottom of the world's most isolated sea. This is the Spacecraft Cemetery. And the story of why it exists is more fascinating, more dangerous, and more human than you might expect. To understand why engineers need a graveyard for spacecraft, you first need to understand what happens when something large comes back from orbit. When a spacecraft re-enters Earth's atmosphere, it does not simply fall. It hits the upper atmosphere at velocities between 7 and 8 kilometers per second, roughly 25 times the speed of sound. At that speed, the friction with air molecules generates temperatures that can exceed 1,600 degrees Celsius on the spacecraft's surface. Most of the vehicle burns up completely, vaporized, gone, but not all of it. Certain components, dense metal parts, titanium fuel tanks, reinforced structural frames, survive the heat. They punch through the atmosphere still largely intact and hit the ocean surface at tremendous speed. And when you are talking about something the size of a space station, the debris field can stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Now ask yourself the obvious question. If debris survives re-entry and hits the surface, where do you want that to happen? Not over cities, not over shipping lanes, not over fishing grounds or coastlines or anywhere that a falling piece of titanium the size of a car could kill someone. You want it to land in the most remote, most empty, most unreachable stretch of ocean on Earth. You want Point Nemo. The name Point Nemo was coined in 1992 by a survey engineer named Hervoje Lukatela, who used a computer program to calculate the single point on Earth's surface farthest from any landmass in every direction. The 3 closest land points are all remote islands: Ducie Island, Motu Nui, and Maher Island, each sitting roughly 2,700 kilometers away. The point sits at coordinates 48 degrees 52 minutes south latitude, 123 degrees 23 minutes west longitude. It is in the South Pacific. It is cold. It is gray. And it is as far from humanity as you can get while still standing on this planet. Space agencies around the world recognized its value almost immediately. Since the 1970s, over 300 spacecraft have been deliberately guided to re-enter the atmosphere and crash into the waters around Point Nemo. Russian space stations, European cargo freighters, Japanese supply ships, American research satellites, all of them aimed with precision at this single unreachable coordinate, their final trajectories calculated down to the kilometer. The largest object ever sent there was the Russian Mir space station, a 130-ton orbital laboratory that had been continuously inhabited for over a decade. In March 2001, after 15 years in orbit and over 86,000 trips around the Earth, Mir was deorbited. Controllers fired its engines to slow it down, let gravity take hold, and guided it into a controlled descent over the South Pacific. It broke apart in the upper atmosphere. Pieces rained down across hundreds of kilometers of open ocean, and the largest surviving fragments sank 4 kilometers to the bottom of Point Nemo. A machine that had carried human beings through space, that had been home to cosmonauts and scientists from dozens of nations, settled silently into the dark. And it is still there right now. But Mir is not alone. Scattered across the seabed around Point Nemo lie the remains of over 263 verified spacecraft. Russia's Progress cargo ships, which resupplied the International Space Station for decades, are the most numerous. The European Space Agency's automated transfer vehicles, each the size of a double-decker bus, are down there. Japan's H-2 transfer vehicles. Pieces of rockets and satellite platforms and experimental modules whose names most people have never heard. They rest in complete darkness, under crushing pressure, in water cold enough to slow almost all biological decay. The metal corrodes slowly. The electronics are long dead. But the shapes, the frames, the tanks, the structural bones of these machines persist. It is a museum that no one will ever visit. Here is the part that most people do not realize. The International Space Station, the largest object ever assembled in space, a structure the size of a football field that has been continuously inhabited since the year 2000, is also headed for Point Nemo. NASA has already confirmed it. The ISS is scheduled to be deorbited in 2030. After nearly 3 decades of continuous human presence in space, the station will be guided into a controlled re-entry and targeted at the Spacecraft cemetery. The same station where astronauts have lived, worked, conducted thousands of experiments, celebrated birthdays, watched sunrises from orbit, will make its final descent and join the graveyard at the bottom of the South Pacific. And the engineers who will guide it there will do so with the same cold precision they use for everything else. Because that is what this work demands. Think about that for a moment. Right now, the station that represents the greatest cooperative engineering achievement in human history, built by 15 nations, assembled piece by piece over 13 years, has a confirmed burial plot. The coordinates are already chosen. The trajectory is already being planned. Point Nemo is waiting. Here is the thought I want to leave with you. 4 kilometers beneath the surface of the most isolated ocean on Earth, in a darkness that sunlight has never touched, the machines that carried human ambition to the edge of the universe are resting quietly. They went higher than any human being had ever gone. They orbited at speeds we cannot intuitively understand. They made discoveries that changed science, medicine, technology, and our understanding of the cosmos. And they ended up here, in silence, together. Point Nemo is not just a graveyard. It is the most honest place on Earth, the place where the gap between human ambition and human impermanence is most clearly visible. We build extraordinary things. We send them to the stars. And eventually, inevitably, we send them to the bottom of the sea. The ocean does not care about our achievements, but it keeps them safe, in the dark, forever. If that made you feel something, subscribe. Because the universe is full of stories like this one, and we are just getting started.